for 2 nth roots. This is when you turn a radical form into a rational form, or vice versa. N represents nth root. The radical is the radical. D is also the radical. And in the rational form, Mn is the exponent, and B is a base.
So here we're going to turn our radical form into a rational form by taking our nth root and moving it under the m to make it the denominator of the exponent. To turn the rational form into a radical form, you just take your denominator of the exponent and bring it outside the radical.
The first thing we're going to practice is turning the radical form into the rational form. So if you're given 4 radical 81, what you have to do to turn it into a rational form is take the 4 and put it as a denominator within the exponent of 81 and put a 1 on top. So 4 radical 81 turns into 81 to the power of 1/4. Okay, so next, if you're given the rational form and you want to turn it into radical form, this is how you do it. So you say you're given 16 to the power of 5/4. You would take the 4th, since it's a denominator, and move it over outside of the radical to where you get 4 radical 16 to the power of 5. And that would be your final answer. Next, we're going to talk about simplifying expressions. If you are given an expression a radical 14 and there's no nth root given, it's always 2. So what you do is first you can turn it into rational form, which would make it a 14 over 2. And so that simplifies to a to the power of 7.
Okay, when you're given your nth root as a 3, you're breaking apart what's under the radical into groups of 3. So you have 9 a's, and you're breaking them into groups of 3. So you'd pull out 1 a from each group of 3 outside the radical, which would give you 3 a's.
Okay, so when you're given an expression with 2 different variables under the radical, what you have to do is you have to break it apart. So there's already the 2 there. So you have to break up the x and the y into groups of 2. So first, you write down how many x's there are, and then how many y's there are. So from this picture, you can easily tell that there's going to be 1 x and then 2 y's. So then the answer would be x, y to the second. Okay, so this part of the video, you need to pause it and practice these equations if you need help. Okay, so after you're done solving it, you can unpause the video and we'll show you how to solve them, I guess. Alright. So now that you've had some time to solve it on your own, we're going to go over them. So with the first one, 7 radical 10 to the 5th, what you have to do is you have to take the nth root of 7 and move it underneath the 5, making the answer 10 to the power of 5/7. Okay? The next equation, or expression, is 3 radical 9 to the 2nd. You do the exact same thing, take the nth root, move it underneath the 2, and so then you have 9 to the power of 2/3. Okay, so for the next set of expressions, rational to radical, for the first problem, you have 4 to the power of 3/2. So what you do is you take the denominator, which is 2, and move it outside of the radical to where you have 2 radical 4 to the 3rd. Okay? Which the 2, whenever you're writing the radical sign, it's always there. So you don't really need to write it. You can, but you don't have to. Okay. So for the next problem, 6a to the power of 1/4, you do the same thing. Take the denominator, which is 4, move it outside of the radical to where it's 4 radical 6a. And then it'd be to the power of 1, but that's unnecessary to write, so don't write it. Okay, so with these expressions, you probably had a little bit of difficulty because we didn't mention what happens if it doesn't go into it evenly. So let's start off from the beginning. Whenever we have the 4 radical 16 x to the 8th, y to the 5th, 4 can be, or 16 is divisible by 4. So we know that's 4. X to the 8th is also divisible by 4, which would be 2. So it'd be x to the 2nd. But y to the 5th, there's only one group of 4, and there's one remaining y. So with that remaining y, you would put that inside of the radical. So you would keep the radical to where the answer would be 4x squared y radical y in that. Okay, so for the next problem, 3 radical 20x to the 4th y to the 6th. 20 is not divisible by 3. So what you have to do is you have to simplify the 20 and find groups of 3. So the first thing you do is do 2, 10. 10 is divisible by 2 and 5. And there are no groups of 3. So you can't do anything with it. However, you can move on to the x to the 4th. And there's one group of 3 in it. So then you're going to have x outside of the radical. And then you're also going to have 2 groups of y outside the radical. So it's going to be x, y squared outside the radical. And then inside the radical, you're going to have 20x.
Hope you have learned from this video. If you have any questions, please email Miss Ayubi and not us.
Go Broncos!